The United States just told Canada, buy our fighter jets or we'll fly our own jets into your airspace. That's not a negotiating position. That's a threat to Canadian sovereignty. US Ambassador Pete Hoekstra went on CBC and said if Canada doesn't buy 88 F-35s from Lockheed Martin, NORAD would need to be altered, meaning more American fighters flying over Canadian soil, controlled by Washington. Ottawa's response was not what the Pentagon expected. Carney ordered a full review of the deal. Then Sweden showed up with an offer: 72 Gripen fighters, 6 surveillance aircraft built in Canada, 12,600 Canadian jobs. And there's a poll number buried in all of this that tells you exactly where Canadians stand. 43% prefer the Gripen. Another 29% want a mixed fleet. That's 72% of Canadians saying, we don't need to buy American. This is the biggest defense story in Canada right now. Subscribe and hit the bell. This story goes back to 2022. Canada signed a deal to buy 88 F-35A Lightning II fighter jets from Lockheed Martin to replace the aging CF-18 Hornets. The price tag, massive. The delivery timeline, years out. The dependency, total. Every part, every software update, every maintenance contract flows through the Pentagon and Lockheed Martin. Canada would be locked into an American weapon system with no independent control over upgrades, repairs, or data. Then Trump came back, tariffs on Canadian steel, threats about the 51st state, trade war escalating. And suddenly, the question became very simple. Do you hand your entire air defense to a country that's taxing your exports and threatening your sovereignty? Ambassador Hoekstra made the threat explicit. January 2026, CBC interview. If Canada goes with an inferior product that is not as interchangeable, interoperable as what the F-35 is, he said, that changes our defense capability. And as such, we have to figure out how we're going to replace that. Translation: if you don't buy our jets, we'll fill your sky with ours. Think about what that means for you. Canadian airspace, the Arctic, the approaches to the Northwest Passage, the routes over your home, patrolled by American pilots, answering to American command on American timelines. Not because Canada can't defend itself, but because Washington wants to sell you a product. And here's the detail that makes the threat ring hollow. A leaked Royal Canadian Air Force document showed the F-35 scored 95% in their evaluation against the Gripen's 33%. Sounds like a knockout. But that evaluation was done in 2021, before the Gripen E entered full service, before Sweden joined NATO, before Saab partnered with Canadian company Bombardier. The plane that scored 33% 5 years ago is not the plane being offered today. What Ottawa did next, that's the part that stunned Washington. Carney ordered the review. Full stop on the remaining 72 jets. Only the first 16 are legally committed. Then Sweden came to the table, and their offer wasn't just a jet, it was a strategy. 72 Gripen E fighters, 6 GlobalEye airborne early warning aircraft co-developed with Canadian company Bombardier. Final assembly in Canada, maintenance in Canada. 12,600 Canadian aerospace jobs, intellectual property transfer, meaning Canada would own the knowledge, not just the hardware, and a 3-year delivery timeline compared to the F-35's delays that have pushed software-ready jets years behind schedule. Now here's where the dominoes start falling. November 2025, Sweden's king and queen visit Canada. That wasn't tourism. That was a choreographed defense sales event. December, Saab's formal proposal lands on senior ministers' desks in Ottawa. January, Hoekstra makes his threat on CBC. February, Carney launches the review. And this week, in Iceland, during a NATO air policing mission, Danish F-35s and Swedish Gripens are flying together, side by side, sharing data over the same Link 16 system that Washington threatened to withhold from Canada. The commander of Sweden's air detachment in Iceland, Lieutenant Colonel Johan Legert, was asked directly, Could the US pull the red card and block Canada from using Link 16 with Gripens? His answer: if Canada is the first country where the US draws the red card, then we have a problem. But he immediately added, that has never happened in any country where Sweden has sold Gripens. Never. Not once. And Defense Minister David McGuinty said it plainly: Canada will prioritize domestic arms purchases and rely less on US weapons. That's not a hint. That's a policy direction. You see the pattern? The Pentagon says buy our jet or else. Canada says we'll review. Sweden says here's an alternative with 12,600 jobs. NATO allies prove the jets work together. And polls show 72% of Canadians back moving away from full American dependency. Washington expected Ottawa to fold. Ottawa opened a new door instead. And this connects to everything Carney is doing abroad. Australia: over-the-horizon radar purchased instead of from the US-India. Uranium deals bypassing Washington. The CPTPP EU bridge. Trade architecture without America. The Gripen isn't just a jet. It's the defense version of the same strategy. Diversify, build sovereignty, reduce dependency. Step back and look at what's actually happening. Canada is being told by its neighbor, you must buy our weapons, fly our planes, depend on our systems. And for the first time in 70 years, Canada is saying, maybe not. This isn't about which jet is better on paper. It's about who controls Canadian skies. An F-35 fleet means every software update, every weapons integration, every data sharing decision goes through Washington. If relations deteriorate, and they already have, that's a kill switch on Canadian air defense. A Gripen fleet built in Canada, maintained in Canada, with transferred intellectual property. That's sovereignty. Real operational sovereignty. Here's why this doesn't reverse. The first 16 F-35s are committed. Canada will get those. But the remaining 72 are now in review. Saab's offer is on the table. Bombardier is a partner. The jobs number, 12,600, is in the public conversation. No politician walks that back in an election year. The Gripen is flying with NATO allies right now in Iceland. Interoperability isn't theoretical. It's being demonstrated in real time on camera with Danish F-35s. And here's the part that worries Washington most. If Canada breaks the F-35 monopoly, the biggest single-source Western defense purchase in history, other allies will follow. Australia is already buying non-US radar. European nations are developing their own sixth-generation fighters. Japan and Italy are in the GCAP program. The F-35 was supposed to be the jet everyone buys. Canada saying no thanks to 72 of them cracks that assumption wide open. I believe this is the most important defense decision Canada has made in a generation. Not because of the jet specs, because of what it says about who we are, a country that defends its own airspace, builds its own planes, employs its own workers, and makes its own choices. That's not anti-American. That's pro-Canadian. If you think Canada's defense decisions should put Canadian jobs first, hit the like button. Let's make sure this story gets seen. The F-35 review is ongoing. Saab's offer is on the table. NATO is proving the Gripen works alongside F-35s in Iceland right now. And 72% of Canadians are saying what politicians are only starting to whisper: we don't have to buy everything from Washington. Here's my question for you. Gripen, F-35, or a mixed fleet? If you were advising Carney, which direction would you go and why? I want to hear from people who've served, people in aerospace, people who just care about Canadian sovereignty. Drop your take in the comments. The Pentagon said buy our jets, or we'll fly our own into your airspace. Canada opened a different door, 12,600 jobs. Canadian built, Canadian maintained, Canadian controlled. That's not a procurement decision. That's a declaration. And declarations, once made, don't get unmade. The Gripen story makes a lot more sense when you see the full picture of how Canada's oil position just changed because of the Iran war. The same strategy of reducing dependency on one source. I broke that down completely. That video is right here. I'll see you there.